Hello and welcome to Magnetic Rise. I am your host, Zofila Gazi, and this is the post, and this is the podcast where we uncover the real stories behind scaling businesses, how they innovate and thrive in competitive industries. Today, I'm excited to welcome Paul Shrater. He is the CEO of Minimus. Paul has built an incredible business from the ground up, pioneering the niche of small size convenience products and expanding into custom packaging solutions, which he will tell us a whole lot more about today. Paul, welcome to Magnetic Rise. It is a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Yeah, likewise. Excited to be here and chat.
Thank you. Awesome. So, Paul, let's get started with your entrepreneurial story. So, what inspired you to start Minimus, and how did you identify the opportunity to enter into the market that you're in?
It's a good question. So I went to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, focused on entrepreneurial management, and actually focused that on the entertainment industry, and went into film and TV as a producer and writer, and even worked on the Sony lot and sold a script for like $1 million, and was busy doing that. And this is in 2004, and my family was on a trip I couldn't go on. My parents' sister and brother-in-law, and they rented a cabin in New Hampshire in the United States here. And at the end of the week, everybody said, well, we've got these half-filled salad dressing bottles and half-eaten cereal boxes, and we're not going to put it in our luggage and fly with it home. We're going to throw it away, and it feels, bad that it's wasteful. Wouldn't it be great if you could buy your favorite brands in a miniature size? And I said, well, there's this new thing called e-commerce, where people are trusting putting their credit card online for the first time, because at that time that was still a thing. And I said, there's a lot of demand. Are people going to want to buy these things online? But there's not a lot of supply yet. So let's carve out a niche of everything miniature. Basically be the Amazon of miniature things before Amazon became Amazon. And so we did, single serving food items. We did travel size toiletries, little single serve medicine packets, sunscreen, anything in its sort of single use, like small size. And we have 2,500 SKUs from about 300 manufacturers. So we source from big brands like Procter and Gamble all the way on down to small brands that sells direct to consumer and wholesale, which sells to hundreds of market segments. So hospitals, cruise ships, sports teams, government agencies, including the astronauts on the International Space Station. We supply them with their condiment packets and cheese and hummus. And I've even shipped fruit cake into space, which has its own story. But that then, as you alluded to in the intro, led to brands assuming that we manufactured all those items, which we didn't. And they would come to us to see if we could package their barbecue sauce or their shampoo or whatever. And I said, well, we don't do that, but let me see if I can help you. And I went to all these contract manufacturers and contract packagers, which is the industry term for factory that does that kind of thing, and all over the Los Angeles area here where we are. And they all said, how many millions of pieces do you want? And I said, well, my client just wants like 10,000 or 50,000. And they said, go away. And I realized it's an old school, non-entrepreneurial industry that was built around entrepreneurship dating before the era of e-commerce, when you had to have big capital and do it in a big way and have wealthy parents or something. So now that all of a sudden e-commerce became something that made entrepreneurship become a big deal. Like when I went to the Wharton School, the entrepreneurial program was on the second floor in the back corner of a building. Now there's a 7-story building just for entrepreneurship. So that era of e-commerce started happening. So I love businesses that capture societal shifts. And so that idea of credit cards, coming online for the first time and capturing that phenomenon, what was happening in e-commerce, and then realizing that these brands need what I call a scaling facility, something that can start with small production runs up to larger ones. And whereas everybody in the industry is only really built for the large production runs. So we launched a contract packaging facility. Minimusproducts.biz is the website for that. And the e-commerce company is minimus.biz, which is now ironically small, given that Amazon became Amazon. But it led to these other businesses. So So we started, we're unique in the country here in the United States that we do food, beauty, supplements, personal care type items. We do liquids, powders, particulates, packets, stick packs, bottles, jars, cans, bags, kosher certified, organic certified. We can do over the counter OTC for topicals and things. So, and then what happened with that was the brands were like, great, you're making my minis, now make my full sizes. And they said, and you do your own fulfillment, direct to consumer and wholesale down the street. Can you do fulfillment for me too? So all of a sudden we became a 3PL or third party logistics fulfillment center for brands. And then it became not just brands we were packaging for, but other brands would come in and say, hey, you're doing fulfillment, or a lot of celebrities, especially high profile celebrities who don't necessarily have an infrastructure of, a company to support that kind of thing. They may be focusing on sales and marketing and promotion, but they needed somebody who could kind of handhold them. And we were finding that we were treating these clients as if they were still our own brand, because it was the same staff, same systems. And so that again was unique in that fulfillment industry that also predated e-commerce, where it was mostly pallets of goods coming in and going out to retailers. They weren't pick and packing individual orders. They weren't doing customer service out to the public. They weren't talking to their client every day about needing different, things that were going on. So that whole industry was getting these customers that were more demanding than the service they were used to providing. And so all of a sudden we started getting these e-commerce brands coming to us because they were unhappy with their traditional fulfillment center, and just by coincidence we were treating them as if it was still our own brand, so it worked out really well. And then it continued on with other companies where we've got a food service distribution company. We opened another warehouse in Ohio, and we can leverage our account we have with FedEx between our Southern California and our Ohio warehouses. We can hit 86% of the US population within 2 days using FedEx Ground, and the rest of the population on day 3. So in the food service industry, there's these large national companies that have their own trucks and distribution centers, but they won't stock certain products from certain brands unless they're getting the sell-through in that particular distribution center. So when you have a major brand or even a minor brand that wants to get a national distribution, if they get a national client who wants the same product in every location, unless every one of those distribution centers for that national distributor has enough sell-through of their product, they might stock you in some of them, but not all of them. So we came in to fill the holes for one of the big major food brands. And then we went to the national buying groups, because they have these in that industry. There's these groups that basically get tens of thousands of buyers to come together, and they leverage that to get the best pricing from brands. And they said, that's great that you're working with the major food brands, but can you help us with the small food brands? Because now consumers more than ever are moving away from just traditional brands they've always used that everybody knows, and they're wanting to try new things. And that, again, is another new societal shift and phenomenon that the industry and the infrastructure wasn't yet set up to support. And so then we came in to start doing that with them. And then I ended up partnering with some folks on a TikTok agency that we work directly with the TikTok executives here in the United States, representing talent and brands and doing live selling, and which is a big phenomenon just getting going here in the US, really driven by TikTok. Another company that really takes high profile celebrities who want to be entrepreneurs and the category that they're interested in and passionate about, and I can bring innovation to them, given that I work with a lot of food scientists and chemists and inventors and all that. So, and there's some other businesses, some other consumer products brands. I'm working in the video game space with what they call phygital products. So if you have kids and they play video games like Roblox, and they buy digital items, outfits, or digital skateboards or something in the game, we can now make the physical product. And when you buy the physical product, you get a code that gets you an exclusive digital item back in the game. So that's a business that I've got a partner with, or a couple of partners with in that space, doing what they call phygital products, physical, digital, combination. So, serial entrepreneur.
That
began with cereal.
that is incredible. When you first started, did you even envision that it could grow to what it is today?
No, we started with myself, 500 square feet, in an office building, 4 shelves, a computer, no employees. It was my side hustle before that term even was a thing. While I was being a film and TV producer, and had no idea. Even when we got into our first warehouse, it was 11,000 square feet, had a handful of employees, and my parents quit their jobs and joined the company and all that. So we've hired aunts and uncles and cousins and all that. So it no, could have never predicted, and still can't predict what's next.
Yeah, like I'm saying, it's just incredible. I'm still trying to grasp all of it because it started as this, what you would think is a small business idea, but it turns out it was a small seed that has grown and blossomed, and
Yeah.
it's still going to because, like you said, the market is ever changing,
Yeah.
and the
And
possibilities are endless.
yeah, and it's all again driven by seeing need and opportunity, but
Mhm.
also within the same kind of ecosystem. Like I'm not going to go and open a restaurant. It doesn't fit with all this. But if I now can partner on a brand with a celebrity, co-own the brand with them, and I can make the product, fulfill the product, distribute the product, do TikTok marketing of the product, like it starts to become a somewhat of a vertically integrated system that can be leveraged into brand ownership and things like that. So that's kind of the next iteration, is figuring out how to mine value out of that system.
Okay, I'm interested to know though, with all of these changes, how do you approach product expansion while staying true to your core brand identity?
Yeah, I mean, it again, it's kind of what I was just saying in terms of being focused on things that fit that and connect in some way. It's really primarily consumer products. There's some digital things and things like that related, and there's an AI component to something I'm working on now in the celebrity product space that it can support that and work together. But it's really things that are, one, driven by spotting opportunity and need in the marketplace, and things that are sort of societal shifting. Like when I was younger, it was actors wanted to be rock stars wanted to be actors. Now they all want to be entrepreneurs, but they don't have time to be an entrepreneur other than the piece that they're good at, which is being creative and being, knowing how to promote, knowing what can connect to the consumer because they have an innate, ability to do that. But other than that, they don't want to deal with finance and accounting and operational scheduling and planning and sourcing and like so being recognizing there's a need for them to have a partner that does those things. Again, sort of those societal shifts and being able to leverage, what we already have into that next thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. What were some of the biggest hurdles that you faced in the early days of scaling your business?
I would say in the early days, it was people, employees, and making sure that you had I guess, two things really: people who had good critical thinking skills. I find that a majority of people, workers, employees, whatever, need to be told what to do. And in an entrepreneurial environment, it doesn't work. In a big company, you can have your role and your spot and your specific task, as sort of the cog in the machine, if you will. But in an entrepreneurial environment, you got to put on a lot of hats. You got to make a lot of decisions, a lot of trade-offs. You got to have the skills to see the impacts of those things. You almost have to be a mini entrepreneur within your role within an entrepreneurial company, whether that's customer service or shipping or whatever, or sales or marketing. So having employees that have that mindset is a hard thing to find. And when you find them, really nurturing that and making sure they're in the right role. And the other is just the company culture and making sure that, you've got the people that are there with the right attitude and energy, because one person who is not can make it so nobody wants to come to work each day. And that was an early lesson to learn, that there's just some people who are negative people in life, and they'll bring that energy into the business, and that is catastrophic for everybody, and they have to be taken out of that environment. So those would be the biggest hurdles, really. I mean, it wasn't hurdles per se, but lessons to learn that weren't ones you might have thought of. I mean, normally people will say, "Oh, it's sales and it's marketing and it's a good product." No, have all that. Like, to me, that's the easy part. Like, actually getting your system internally to work well and smooth. That was the harder part. And that's why people say, shipping product, how hard is that? You have a warehouse, you get orders, you ship it out. It's not that easy. Um, so it's understanding how to build a good system.
I absolutely agree with you. And especially because in that specific point, there are so many variables in the sense that the people that you bring into the company all have very different personalities, very different backgrounds. They may be competent in terms of the skills, but in terms of building the company culture, that's where the
Right.
difference might come. And I think in the early stages, you're right. A lot of people, it's not something that they look at. It's not sort of a risk that they consider could have an impact on their businesses. So yeah, that's a very valid point
Yeah.
that you've made.
And and by the way, one of the other aspects there is sometimes you can have somebody who's really smart and they're frustrated in their role. You're frustrated that they're not able to do well in their role, but it doesn't make sense because they're smart, good people, they're nice people, they're good people. And you realize it's just the way their brain works is not right for that particular role, but move them into a different role that fits how they think and they thrive. And so there's been some of that we've done where I've been able to move people just laterally into a different role, and all of a sudden they're happy and we're happy with them. And it just is sometimes people are process people or they're people, and it's kind of the terms I call it. I don't know if those are real terms, but those people don't fit together. They don't understand each other. Someone who's about the goal and doesn't care about saying good job every day. Some people need someone to say good job, every day. Other people and don't understand this aggression towards the goal at the expense of being nice to another human, kind of thing. So you need to understand, the way different people think and make sure they're put in the right space that makes sense, for who they are.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Something interesting that I came across the other day is part of the hiring process for one of the companies is they do a personality assessment. So basically,
Yeah.
you fill out a test, and they assess from there what type of employee you would be, and then based on the manager that they've got in that department that they want to fit you in, they can then match the personalities, and in that way
Yeah.
alleviating the issue that you
A
raised.
lot of bigger companies use techniques like that. It's very hard in a small company when you don't have that many people, and it's not as specific to get those matches going. It's more like gut instinct about people when you meet them, and then are they, once they're in the role, how does it really work? Because I found that you can get a decent sense of people, but until they're doing it and you really see who they are, because people are different in an interview than they are day to day. And until they're day to day, it's very hard to tell that.
Yeah, definitely. So, like you mentioned, the space that you're in changes and it can change rapidly and it can change drastically. What are some of the trends as someone who's been around for this time now and has changed? What are some of the trends that you see shaping the future of e-commerce and consumer product businesses and things like that?
Yeah, there's, you know, really the trends relate to marketing and sales is kind of what I look at, because that is really what's driving, the business. Yeah, there could be trends in supply chain, but really the core to look at is sales and marketing. And the I would say COVID caused a disruption, not in the way you think, to that. What happened is when brick and mortar stores couldn't sell product because no one was out and about, they moved a lot of their attention and money into their e-commerce businesses, and that side of their company. And the place that most businesses were getting customers was advertising on Facebook and Instagram. And so when all of a sudden more money was coming into those advertising spaces and competing for the same eyeballs, the cost per thousand views, the CPM rate, rose drastically. And at the same time, Apple with your iPhone allows you to opt out of sharing your data, which means as an advertiser, it's harder to find the exact right customer who might be right for your product. At the same time, the cost increases for the eyeball views. So you target less, so it became more expensive all the way around. So the cost to acquire a customer might have gone from like $10 to like $40. In one of the only places that you can use to get customers these days, if you're an e-commerce business trying to go nationally or globally or whatever. And so that caused a lot of small businesses that relied on that to either go bankrupt or be in real financial trouble or have to really retrench and get smaller. And that has a ripple effect into fulfillment businesses like ours or contract packaging business. Like all the people that support those businesses get affected too. And then you start to look at, well, what's the next value proposition? What's the next place they can go to, brands like that can go to get customers? And part of it is you look where people's eyeballs are. Where do people's eyeballs go to learn about product? And what's the cost of getting in front of them, for those eyeballs, again, to look at that value proposition. And right now, the one place to do that is TikTok, which is fascinating. Again, I think given all that, the hubbub that's happened around it, and that's because if you can be good at storytelling, again, my background in film and TV, if you can tell a good story in a video and get someone emotionally connected to your brand, your product, or even to you that is, selling a product, then it doesn't cost anything. The algorithm finds the right person automatically. Like with the advertising on Facebook and Instagram, you had to pick all the attributes of a person you wanted to get your ad in front of. But now with TikTok, it already does that automatically, way better than you could have ever done by trialing it out to the right personas with so many variables about that persona. As it keeps going, it gets deeper and deeper to know exactly who the right customer is. And it may take, from our TikTok agency looking at things, it takes about a month for the algorithm to kind of really learn based on the amount of inputs you're giving it, to about 3 months to really peak and really reach your target audience. So putting out videos, going live is another big thing. More than 30% of all e-commerce in China is live selling. And in the US, it's barely anything. So that's another place where TikTok as a company is really pushing. If you go on TikTok and you scroll through, you see a lot more live things being pushed out to consumers, because live selling, they know, is around the corner in the US. And so they want to be the pioneers of that. And being able to be entertaining while going live and talking about a product. I mean, here in the United States, we've had QVC and HSN since the mid 1980s. It's been our live selling. It's a little different again with an algorithm now. With those, you have to tune in to a channel and know you want to watch that. Now everybody's going, 160 million Americans are going on TikTok, and you're scrolling through, and the algorithm is going to feed you the types of products it thinks you are most likely to buy. It's not going to feed me women's, cosmetics. It's going to feed me things that, somebody my age and my demographic and my interests, based on other videos I've looked at and liked and everything, it's going to know what products to show me. So that marketing automation really is extremely, extremely powerful. And especially the ability, if you can get creative and embed that commercial for your brand inside a piece of entertainment, because again, people aren't going to watch commercials on TikTok. They're going to be entertained. So if you can go live and you can create content that is going to entertain people, that to me is more powerful than what they used to call interruption marketing. Reading a magazine, there's an ad you didn't want to do. Watching TV, there's a TV commercial that interrupted you from the entertainment you were trying to do. If you can embed the entertainment and the product together, that's a super powerful combination psychologically that I think we're just at the beginnings of. So to answer your question, as a trend, live selling, TikTok, I think those are the good value propositions. But going, even further, have AI that can start to analyze and help you figure out like how to be entertaining and what makes somebody laugh, what makes them cry, what makes, you touch at their heartstrings. Like, how can you create that even if you're not a good storyteller? AI might be able to help you do that. So those are some things I think that are the trends, to look out for is really moving away from interruption marketing into entertainment marketing.
Definitely agree with you. We've seen a whole lot more of that, especially in the bigger brands. I think it's very interesting that everyone is catching on to it and the different ways that the brands are building their brand personalities beyond just what we see on like a magazine, like you say. So very interesting. For someone who's listening to this and saying, what is live selling? What is that? How would you describe it to them very briefly?
Well, right now, most of live selling is not storytelling. It's, here's this pen. It's $1.99. It's black. It's ink. I only have 1,000 pieces. Buy it now. It's going fast. Click below, and you click on it, and up comes the ability to put in your credit card and buy the thing. On TikTok Shop. So that's live selling right now. Is someone just price, attributes. Here's the thing. Here's how it works. Let me show you how to use it or how it tastes or whatever. And that, that's the current state of live selling. They're starting to realize, you could tell more stories. Like, let me tell you how this pen made me $1 million. And now I can tell a fun story about that. And now you might be more interested in buying the pen because now you have a story to tell somebody about the pen you bought that made this guy get $1 million. So understanding how to shift from just hard selling attributes live on camera to somebody people scrolling through into some storytelling lives. But that's really what it is you're selling a product live. But my tip is be entertaining while you're doing it.
Certainly, yes. Well, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, your insights, and your expertise as well. I think you've shared a lot of valuable information and in a lot of sectors that a lot of people were thinking of at the moment. And I think your story is honestly a testament to the power of identifying market gaps, staying adaptable, and continuously innovating. So, yeah, that was very inspirational. To our listeners who have been listening to this and want to get in touch with you, where can they get in touch with you, whether it's for business purposes or anything like that?
LinkedIn, Paul Shrater, Shrater on LinkedIn, but also our service businesses. If people need fulfillment here in the United States, minimusfulfillment.biz, biz, for contract packaging, food, beauty, and supplements. All it. It's minimusproducts.biz. .biz. So those are sort of two key websites to look at for some of those things. PaulSchrater.com. I have my own personal website. I kind of put all that stuff on bio and all that, but that's how people can reach me.
Awesome. And that is a wrap for this episode of Magnetic Rise. Paul's journey, as I've mentioned, reminds us that smart business decisions, adaptability, and also relentless focus on customer needs are a key to lasting success. So until next time, keep rising and seizing the small opportunities that lead to big wins.